The rain had begun as a gentle mist when we left the restaurant, but by the time we reached the highway, it had thickened into a cold, relentless curtain. I sat silently in the passenger seat, watching the droplets streak across the window like tiny tears racing one another to the bottom. The atmosphere inside the car felt even heavier than the storm outside. My husband's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly that the tendons stood out on his arms. I knew that posture, jaw clenched, eyes forward, breath sharp and shallow. I had seen it during arguments, but never had the silence felt this dangerous. I dared to speak. "Can we talk about what happened in there?" His laugh was bitter, humorless. "Talk? You want to talk now? You humiliated me in front of everyone, Alara." "I wasn't trying to humiliate you," I replied, my voice trembling despite my efforts to sound calm. "I only said you were drinking too much because you were yelling at the server." "Oh, here we go again," he snapped, cutting me off. "Always making me the villain. Always pretending you're the saint." "I never said that." "You didn't have to. You never do." His words lashed like a whip. I swallowed hard, trying to steady the ache building in my chest. I told myself to breathe, to stay rational, to keep peace the way I always did. But something inside me cracked a little. I was tired of tiptoeing, tired of soothing apologies, tired of carrying the weight of his moods like a fragile vase ready to shatter at any time. "You scared me in there," I said softly. "The way you yelled." "I scared you," he hissed, turning to glare at me for a split second. "Maybe you should be scared. Maybe then you'd stop treating me like an idiot." I stared at him, stunned. The highway lights flashed across his face, illuminating an expression I barely recognized. Anger, yes, but something deeper too. Resentment. Disgust. Perhaps even hatred. My hands tightened in my lap. "I don't treat you like an idiot. I'm only saying that you were drunk, and you were." "Shut up," he snapped. 2 words. Sharp enough to slice the last of my composure. I felt my throat tighten, my vision blurring as tears threatened to spill. I turned toward the window, pressing my lips together. The windshield wipers groaned as they swiped across the storm. The car sped faster, the engine growling like it shared his rage. And then, without warning, he slammed his foot on the brake. My body jolted forward, caught by the seatbelt. My hand flew to the dashboard. "What are you doing?" I gasped. He didn't answer. He put the car in park, breathing heavily. Then he leaned across me, reached for the door handle, and flung the passenger door wide open. Cold air and rain whipped into the car, slapping against my skin. "Get out," he said. I stared at him, disbelief flooding me. "What?" I said, "Get out, Alara. Since you think you can tell me how to live my life, walk home. Think about what you said. You can't be serious." "I am." His voice dropped to a chilling calm. "Get out." I hesitated too long. He shoved me. Not hard enough to injure, but hard enough to push me out of the car. My feet slipped on wet asphalt. My palms scraped the gravel as I caught myself. I looked up, rain plastering my hair to my face, my breath stuttering. He looked at me as if I were a burden he had finally set down. The door slammed. The car pulled away, tires spraying water across my legs. I watched the red taillights shrink, swallowed by darkness, until they vanished completely. For a few agonizing seconds, the only sound was rain hitting the ground around me. My body trembled uncontrollably, cold seeping through my clothes and into my bones. Cars zipped past, their headlights reflecting off the wet road, but none slowed. None noticed the woman standing alone on the shoulder of a highway, abandoned, hurting, and utterly lost. I wrapped my arms around myself and began to walk, numb and shivering. 5 minutes passed. 10. Then I saw it, soft golden headlights approaching slowly, not rushing past like the others. A black SUV glided toward me. It slowed, stopped. The passenger door opened with a gentle, deliberate click. An elderly man stepped out, umbrella in hand, silver hair shimmering under the rain. "My dear," he said in a warm, steady voice, "you shouldn't be out here alone." I froze. His eyes held no judgment, only concern, only kindness. He reached out a hand, not forcing, not demanding, just offering. "Please," he said softly, "get in. I will help you in ways your husband could never even imagine." And somewhere deep inside me, a small flicker of hope stirred. For a heartbeat, I could only stare at the elderly man standing in the rain. His umbrella shielded him, but he didn't seem to mind the cold drops running down the edges of his coat. His posture was steady, his eyes soft, and his voice had that particular tone that people use when speaking to frightened animals. Gentle. Slow. Meant to soothe. Come, he said, gesturing toward the SUV. You're freezing. The rain was relentless, soaking through my clothes until my skin felt numb. My hair clung to my face, heavy and dripping. My legs shook with the strain of walking and the shock of everything that had happened. I could barely form words, but my instincts whispered that this man was not a threat. Still, caution tugged at me. Why are you helping me? He tilted his head as though the answer was obvious. Because leaving someone alone in a storm is something only a cruel person would do. His eyes narrowed, not at me, but at the thought of the man who had abandoned me. You don't look like someone who deserves cruelty. My throat tightened. Something about the certainty in his voice, the unwavering kindness, loosened the knot of fear inside me. He extended his hand again. Please, let me offer you shelter. Shelter. The word sounded foreign, almost painful. I had long stopped associating it with home. Home had become a fragile place where the floor vibrated with tension, where conversations felt like traps, where love was something I had to earn by shrinking myself smaller and smaller. I nodded weakly. He guided me to the passenger seat of the SUV. The moment I slipped inside, warmth enveloped me. Soft golden lighting illuminated the interior. A thick wool blanket lay folded neatly on the seat, as though placed there intentionally for someone lost, someone broken. The door shut with a comforting thud, separating me from the cold, from the darkness, from the memory of my husband speeding away. The man climbed into the driver's seat and turned the heater up. Wrap yourself in that, he said gently. I pulled the blanket around me. It smelled faintly of cedar and lavender. The scent alone made my eyes sting with new tears. He glanced at me briefly. Are you hurt? I shook my head. Just cold, and a little shaken. Of course you are. He paused, then spoke more softly. I'm Aldrich Vale. I blinked. The name rang faintly familiar, but my exhausted mind didn't connect the dots. Alara, I managed. Aldrich smiled, and it was a kind smile. Not the strained, polite one people give strangers, but the warm type given to someone you truly hope will be all right. That's a lovely name, he murmured. It suits you. The compliment made me look down at my hands. They trembled slightly beneath the blanket. My wedding ring shimmered under the interior light, and the sight of it felt like a blade turning in my heart. For a few minutes, Aldrich drove in silence, giving me space. The storm drummed against the roof. The heater hummed softly. My breathing slowly evened out. Finally, he asked, would you like to tell me what happened? I hesitated. Telling a stranger felt dangerous, but the words were already lodged in my throat, heavy and burning. And Aldrich's voice carried no judgment, only a quiet invitation. My husband threw me out of the car, I said. The sentence tasted like ash. After an argument. He just left me there. Aldrich's hands tightened on the steering wheel, not fiercely, but in quiet disapproval. That is not something a decent man does, he said simply. I bit my lip as tears slipped down my cheeks. He said I deserved it. Aldrich shook his head. No one deserves abandonment. No one deserves fear. And certainly not you. Something inside me cracked open. A sob burst from my throat before I could stop it. Aldrich didn't turn to stare or pressure me to calm down. He simply reached into the console, pulled out a soft cloth handkerchief and held it out. Here. I took it with shaking hands. You're safe now, he said gently. Whatever you've been through, it ends tonight. I didn't know whether he was making a promise or stating a fact, but the certainty in his voice made a fragile seed of trust take root inside me. When he turned onto a quieter road lined with towering trees, I asked softly, where are we going? To my home, he said. A warm place. A safe place. Just until you decide what you want to do next. I will not push you. I will not ask for anything in return. You have my word. His voice was sincere. Not dramatic or pleading, simply honest. Tears warmed my cheeks as I whispered, thank you. Aldrich gave a small nod. Rest, Alara. I'll drive. Wrapped in the blanket, Soothed by the rhythm of the rain and the steady hum of the engine, I let my eyes. For the first time in years I slept without fear. And without realizing it, I had begun the journey toward reclaiming my life. I woke the next morning in a bed so soft it felt like a cloud had been arranged beneath me. For several long seconds I didn't know where I was. The ceiling above me was high and decorated with carved wooden beams. A gentle light sifted through sheer curtains, casting warm stripes across the room. A quiet fireplace crackled in the corner, its glow like an embrace. Then the memories returned. Rain, cold fear, Aldrich's voice. I sat up slowly, pressing a hand to my chest. My heart no longer raced, but the ache remained like a tender bruise. I glanced around the room again, soft blankets, a vase of fresh wildflowers, a small table set with a silver tray holding tea and fruit. It felt unreal. Felt safe. A soft knock at the door startled me. "Come in," I called gently. Marin, the housekeeper who'd greeted me the night before, stepped inside with a warm smile. She carried folded clothes and a tray of breakfast. "You're awake," she said brightly. "Mr. Vale told me to check on you. How are you feeling, dear?" The kindness in her voice nearly unraveled me again. I forced a small smile. "A little better, thank you." She placed the tray on the bedside table. "Eat whenever you're ready. And there's a hot bath waiting for you down the hall. Take your time. You don't need to rush anything here." Something in those words struck me deeply. You don't need to rush. I'd spent years rushing to keep peace, rushing to avoid provoking anger, rushing to fix everything except myself. Marin squeezed my hand gently before leaving. "You're safe here," she added softly. After breakfast, I wandered through the hallway until I found the bath she mentioned. The room was spacious, with soft towels, candles, and a deep clawfoot tub already filled with steaming water that smelled faintly of rose and eucalyptus. I sank into it slowly, letting the heat seep into my bones, melting away the last remnants of the cold highway night. As I soaked, I didn't cry. I didn't tremble. I just breathed. Later, dressed in fresh clothes that fit surprisingly well, I ventured downstairs. The mansion was peaceful, full of old charm. Paintings lined the walls and the wooden floors creaked softly under my steps. Sunlight filtered through tall windows, revealing shelves filled with books, plants, and ornaments collected over a lifetime. I found Aldrich in the conservatory, tending to a collection of orchids. He greeted me with a smile that was equal parts gentle and relieved. "Good morning, Alara," he said. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I have in a long time," I admitted. He nodded as though he already knew. "You look less pale today." "That's good." I felt a warmth in my chest. Not romantic, not yet. Just the warmth of being seen without pressure, expectation, or judgment. For the next several days I stayed in that mansion. Aldrich kept his promise. He never pressed, never pushed. He simply provided space, warm rooms, quiet corners, books, music, meals, and conversations that flowed softly, like streams through a forest. I learned that Aldrich was a philanthropist who had spent his life helping vulnerable families and supporting shelters. His wealth meant little to him. His concern for people meant everything. He had no children, no spouse, only memories and a quiet longing to give more than he received. Sometimes we walked the garden paths together. Sometimes I sat with Marin in the kitchen while she cooked and told stories of Aldrich's generosity. Sometimes I stayed in my room, staring out the window, trying to understand how a life could shift so drastically in a single night. And slowly, day by day, I began finding parts of myself I had lost. Pieces my husband had chipped away through years of manipulation, anger, and blame. One afternoon, a week after I arrived, Aldrich knocked on my door holding a folder. "There's something you should see," he said. Inside were bank statements, legal documents, and pages marked with highlighted notes. My breath hitched as I read. My husband hadn't just mistreated me. He had been stealing from me. From my father's inheritance. From accounts I trusted him to manage. From the life I had built before he entered it. I felt the world tilt. Anger rushing up, betrayal swirling like a storm, disbelief breaking like glass inside my chest. Tears filled my eyes, but this time they weren't soft. They burned. "I'm so sorry," Aldrich said, his voice thick with compassion. "But you deserve the truth." I swallowed hard. "Why did you help me find this?" He held my gaze steadily. Because you cannot rebuild yourself while standing in the ashes of someone else's lies. His words struck something deep inside me. A fierce spark I hadn't felt in years. Not vengeance. Not violence. Just justice. It was the beginning of reclaiming what was mine. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something powerful awaken within me. Strength. The sun was low when I finally walked into the lawyer's office, accompanied by Aldrich. Its rays filtered through the tall glass windows, illuminating the polished floors where my reflection flickered like a ghost of the woman I once was. But I wasn't a ghost anymore. I stood straighter now. My shoulders didn't curl inward. My gaze didn't hover at the ground. Somewhere between Aldrich's kindness and my own rediscovered strength, the pieces of me had begun to fit together again. A receptionist led us to a conference room, her heels clicking softly. As she opened the door, I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. There he was. My husband sat at the long table, elbows resting arrogantly on the polished wood. He looked up and froze when he saw me. Confusion flickered across his face, followed by irritation and then anger, the expression I knew too well. "Elara," he said sharply, "what are you doing here?" I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I took a seat across from him, Aldrich beside me. The quiet confidence radiating from Aldrich contrasted sharply with my husband's restless fidgeting. The lawyer entered moments later, placing a stack of documents before us. My husband's eyes darted between the papers and me. "Elara, what is this?" he demanded. "Truth," I said softly. My voice didn't shake. "Your truth." The lawyer began explaining the findings, the illegal transfers, the forged signatures, the withdrawals made under my name. My husband's complexion shifted from pale to red, then to a sickly shade somewhere between fear and fury. "This is nonsense," he snapped, slamming his palm onto the table. "She's being manipulated. She's..." "Enough." Aldrich's voice cut through the room like iron, calm but absolute. My husband turned toward him. "Who the hell are you?" "A friend," Aldrich replied. "One who ensures Elara isn't taken advantage of anymore." My husband scoffed. "You think you can just..." "No," I interrupted softly. "He doesn't have to do anything. You did this to yourself." He stared at me, stunned by the confidence in my tone. For years I had been the quiet one, the one who apologized first, the one who soothed his temper, accepted blame, rationalized insults, the one who walked on broken glass to keep peace. But now, I wasn't that woman anymore. "Why?" I asked him, the word trembling with hurt that hadn't fully healed. "Why did you steal from me? Why lie? Why treat me like..." I exhaled shakily. "Like I was disposable." His jaw clenched. Money was tight. I was handling everything. "You didn't understand." "Stop," I said, raising a hand. "Handling our finances doesn't mean you get to drain my inheritance. It doesn't mean you get to erase my name from accounts that belong to me. It doesn't mean you get to leave me in the middle of a highway." His expression twisted. "I made a mistake." "Mistakes don't build over 3 years," I cut in. "Lies do." He looked around the room, realizing he was cornered. The lawyer slid another document forward. The agreement forcing him to return everything stolen, surrender access to all shared accounts, and relinquish rights he had abused. "You can't force me to sign this," he snapped. "You already have," the lawyer said calmly. "Your prior signatures, your forged signatures, make this matter criminal. Signing today is the only way to avoid charges." My husband's breath came shallow, panicked. He looked at me again, desperation creeping into his eyes. "Elara, please. You can't do this. You're my wife." I felt a pang, not love, not longing, but the faint echo of the woman who had tried so hard to be everything he wanted. The woman who had been punished for caring. I met his gaze steadily. "Then you should have treated me like one." Silence followed. He signed. Each stroke of his pen felt like a chain falling off me. When we stepped out of the office, the evening sun cast a golden glow on the parking lot. The wind carried the scent of pine from the distant woods. I closed my eyes, inhaling the crisp air. Relief didn't crash over me. It flowed smoothly, peacefully, like a river finding its course. Aldrich stood beside me. "Are you all right?" I nodded slowly. I finally am." He offered a small, proud smile. You walked through fire, Alara. You didn't let it burn you. I looked at him, gratitude welling in my chest. Thank you for everything. I wouldn't have been able to do this without you. On the contrary, he said gently. All I did was open a door. You chose to walk through it. We stood in quiet for a moment, the sky painted in hues of orange and pink. What now? I asked softly. He looked at the horizon. Now you start over. On your terms. A breeze lifted my hair, warm and freeing. I realized then that this was not the end of my story. It was the beginning. A beginning forged from strength, truth, and freedom. And as I walked toward Aldrich's SUV, no longer shaking, no longer afraid, I felt something bloom inside me. A life reclaimed. A heart restored. A future no longer bound to pain. I was finally free.